Hello again, and welcome to the RR Show. As usual, you know me, I'm Vince, and we have got a couple of stories, few long ones, 2 to be exact, and they're from r/ProRevenge. As usual, leave us a review, share the show, tell your friends, shout it from the rooftops that you love the RR Show and want everybody to know about it. All right, so there you go. Let's jump into it. 2, like I said, from r/ProRevenge, and here we go. From user PredTech. The story is, stick me with hidden charges, I'll show you. So this past Christmas, my missus and I purchased one of our 9-year-old son's Santa gifts from a certain UK sports retail company that also have many stores here in Ireland as well. It was a football rebounder, kind of like a trampoline that you kick the ball at it and it bounces back to you. Anyway, we purchased it from their Irish website and thought nothing more of it. A few days go by and we get a notification from a certain brown uniformed courier company that there are customs charges due on something. And you can imagine we bought many things for the kids, so we had to double check what we've ordered. And we didn't have anything left that was being imported, so we naturally assumed it was a scam. So I told the wife to call the company and find out who shipped it, and it was a different courier company based in the UK. After a bit of digging and investigating, it turns out that it's our rebounder. They had it shipped from the UK via a local carrier to the brown uniform guys to deliver it to us. Now, my wife and I are both on disability, so an additional charge of almost €50 when you're already on a fixed income is harsh, especially at Christmas. So I told her to pay it and I'd deal with the retailer. The first day I called, I had to call 3 times, being stuck on hold for at least 20 minutes each time. But I was patient and polite because I've worked in a call center before, so I knew these people are only doing their job. But I asked to speak to the manager, was promised to call back each time, and that never happened. The second day was quite similar. The third day, I was starting to get annoyed, so I called back, waiting even longer on hold. And finally, wasn't taking this any longer. I told the rep that all I wanted was the €50 back because our consumer rights in Ireland dictate that a person must be informed of any additional charges on a purchase, at the very least by the final checkout screen. And in this case, there was nothing to show that, and I could easily replicate the issue by putting the same item in my basket and going all the way to the checkout screen, and there was nothing saying we'd have to pay import charges. The rep was indifferent to my situation but tried to help, and what he said sent me over the edge. He offered me a measly €20 gift voucher to use on their website, but more importantly, he read a statement to me. He said, "We advise our customers that there may be DDU charges, delivery duty unpaid, i.e. customs charges, on any item that gets shipped outside of the UK." Then I asked him where it states this information and he paused. Then he said he didn't actually know. I said, well, I know one thing. It doesn't say anywhere on this transaction because I've checked it, and because this is a violation of my consumer rights, I'm gonna give your company one last chance to make this right. Have your manager call me within the next 60 minutes, or I'm going to post this entire debacle on LinkedIn and link every senior officer in your company. Then I hung up and I waited. Yet again, no call. The next day, I went on LinkedIn and followed through on my promise. I created a post detailing what they had done by sticking us with hidden charges and that they were ignoring our request for a manager. And everything they said and did. I tagged every senior officer at that company, from the regional managers through the European directors, all the way to the CEO. I shamed them for how they operate their company. This, ladies and gentlemen, was now an act of war. Shortly after I posted that, they took down the item from their website in an attempt to hide this, but they must have thought that I'm a simpleton that doesn't understand how the internet works. They didn't realize that when you search for rebounder on their website, that it shows the item in question. So I took a screenshot of that. Then another of the item page that was now missing. But then I did a Google cache search for the same page and found a version from 2 days prior, happily showing the item. Then I added a comment to my original post. highlighting how they were trying to hide it with the evidence and trolling them for their heinous behavior, especially at Christmas. Then I tagged and shamed all the senior officers again, and at this point, it was really starting to get attention. Not only publicly, but 3 people in incognito mode viewed my profile. I wonder who that could have been. So naturally, I took a screenshot of the 3 mysterious visitors listed on my profile and did the same thing. Commented on my own post and trolling them for their incompetence. The next morning, I got a call from a senior executive at their head office in the UK, practically licking my boots with apologies and asking what she can do to make this right. I told her I originally only wanted my €50 back and it wasn't fair, nor even legal, that I had to pay it, but since I had to go to such lengths to get their attention now, I wanted my €50 back, a full refund on my entire purchase, and I wanted to keep the product. That was the only thing that would make this go away. She asked for a couple hours to fix it, and I said okay. About an hour later, I got another call from her again apologizing. She asked for my PayPal address where she sent the €50, and then she refunded the whole purchase and let us keep the product. Obviously, I thanked her for her help because at that stage, I was just happy it was over. I may just be one man, but my son's view of Santa is far more valuable to me than the opinion of some retail chain that doesn't care about its customers, nor how it operates ethically. So, confession time. I remember a few years ago, I was outside of a movie theater. It was dark, and there was a crowd, and it was the premiere of Star Wars Episode 1, and yes, I was one of the guys dressed as Darth Vader. So, going to the movies for me, it's a fun experience. I have a lot of great memories doing it. And you know what's also great? Saving money. That's where Regal Unlimited comes into play. It is a pretty sweet all-you-can-watch movie subscription pass that pays for itself in just 2 visits. You get any standard 2D movie anytime, no blackout dates or restrictions. And if you want a premium format like IMAX, you get it at a reduced cost. You also get concessions, the non-alcoholic kind, like popcorn, 10% off. So if you're thinking about 2 movies this month, join Regal Unlimited. Sign up now in the Regal app or go to regmovies.com. That's regmovies.com/unlimited. Use promo code RRShowReg. So regmovies.com, that's regmovies.com/unlimited, and use promo code RRShowReg. Darth Vader costume optional. The second of 2 stories today here on this episode dedicated to r/ProRevenge is posted by user The Venja. Story titled, Landlord Screwed with the Wrong Tenant for Too Long. We'll start off by noting that I spent about 2 decades working in security. During that time, I worked many different types of security in many different locations. The one that matters for this story was time spent in rental housing tribunal in a major city, as kind of a bailiff. For those not knowing what that is, think of a courtroom in a major city anyway. In a smaller town, it'll probably be an event room in a hotel, in a community center, as you'd see on TV, but with less formality and an adjudicator instead of a judge. They are functionally the same thing to landlords and tenants, but they definitely aren't the same thing. The place exclusively deals with landlord and tenant disputes and is the only place to resolve landlord and tenant disputes. Note that I wasn't a bailiff and it wasn't a court, but these terms mostly accurately describe the situation and my place in it. For 2 years, I worked at the rental housing tribunal. It was early in my time in security. I was 18 to 20-ish. Being as it was a major city, the sheer number of cases that I sat through was beyond my ability to count. I saw everything there was to see. No one is capable of surprising me with a story because I've seen them all. In detail, as a side duty of mine to ensure all parties had copies of all evidence being presented. Did a lot of photocopying and always read and inspected everything I copied to ensure that nothing got cut off or made ineligible. By the time I stopped working there, I probably knew that everything worked well enough to be an adjudicator myself. Well, obviously not, but I'm certainly no need of a lawyer, either should I ever need to go there. I also had intimate knowledge of how the system worked beyond the actual rules. Like, for example, how adjudicators would always give a little leeway to anyone representing themselves over someone who had a lawyer, or how adjudicators would get when a party was speaking out of turn. Seriously, do not do that. Skip forward almost a decade. I left the city and am in a fairly large town in the same province, same tenant laws. I have a few roommates in a decently sized townhouse. We get along well, but there's a problem. Only I can write checks, and our paydays don't line up. So I'm the one who pays the rent, and I usually can't do it on the first because roommates don't usually all pay in time. We advised the landlord we might be a day or two late, but we'll always have it on the third day at the latest. They have no problem with it all. I spoke to them myself. For about a year, this works fine. No complaints from the landlord because even if we're often a day or two late, we always pay. We're also fairly quiet, we don't damage the property, nearly model tenants. I do not have actually any idea why, but one day this changed. I suspect a different person in the company started overseeing the region. One day, we suddenly got a summons to the Rental Housing Tribunal, hereafter to be referred to as RHT, on the second of the month for failure to pay rent. This doesn't actually lead to a case because we paid the same day, but now we have to pay the application fee the landlord paid in order to serve the summons. I complained to the neighbor who was also the superintendent and eventually heard back that their contact from the company was now demanding the first of the month with no exceptions. Well, that really didn't work for us, so we probably had to pay that fee 15 to 20 times over the next 2 years. I could have gone to tribunal over it, but we were technically without a leg to stand on, and I knew it. Maybe if I went enough times, I can ding them for harassment, but I don't have the time for that and my roommates don't care. After being split between us all, the fee wasn't enough deterrent to change our behavior, so we accepted it. If this was the only issue, there wouldn't be much story though. At around the same time, the rent leeway vanished. So did mandatory maintenance. I'm not going to list everything that went wrong and wasn't fixed. You'll get a decent idea at the end. We suffered through it. We were all working too many hours to be able to actually do anything about it, and we adapted. So after about 2 years, it broke. Everyone but me up and moved out for various reasons within a 4-month period. I'm not going to go into details on any of my roommates because things kind of exploded for a couple of different reasons outside of this. No reason to dig any of that up. I had been saving up for a while and was able to quit my job without having to immediately get another, so I suddenly had a lot of time. I didn't want to stay and pay the rent by myself or have to find new roommates I could live with. And with my experience in the RHT, I knew I had the landlord by the balls. So I went for them. Stopped paying rent. Annoyingly, I didn't get a summons the first month. But I did the second, so I went. With a meticulously documented plethora of evidence of failure to maintain the property and entering the property without formal notice, I had a copy for the landlord and a copy for the adjudicator. I knew from experience that technically you're supposed to give the other party evidence before the tribunal, but I also knew about that leeway an adjudicator gives those who represent themselves. So I didn't give the landlord the evidence until our case came up. 100% total ambush. They argued they were ambushed, but the adjudicator just dismissed the case, dressed me down a little and told me to file my own summons as I should have done. This was the petty revenge. The landlord and lawyer drove 3 hours to get there for nothing. Worse than nothing. I filed my own summons and the big day shows up. It's been about 4 months of me not paying rent at this point. I'm prepared to if I lose, but I don't think I'm gonna lose. The whole thing could not have gone better. I had 20 to 30 pages of evidence and 20 odd photographs. They had nothing. They had no actual defense of our water heater being out for 6 months, or us not having a fridge for over a year, just to mention 2 severe issues. Their entire defense rested on us being late for rent, which actually worked against them once that led to the adjudicator learning how many times we've paid the application fee and lies that had no evidence to support them. They even talked over me a few times, and I saw in his eyes the one time I opened my mouth to protest during their turn to speak, but forced myself to shut up with every grim of willpower I had, so only a squeak came out. The adjudicator respected me. He had no respect for the landlord. I won on every possible front. The only question was how much. It was more than I had ever seen. I got 9 months of free rent, and the landlord was ordered to have everything fixed before the next month was over, or I'd get more. I gave notice I was leaving at the end of the 8th month and left at the end of the 9th. Because the landlord had never renewed the lease, I didn't have to give him the 3 months notice the lease specified. If you want a figure to put to it, I basically got a $13,000 judgment in my favor, adjusted for inflation and rounded up. I also made the landlord and lawyer drive 3 hours twice, only to lose. The landlord's face was so red at the end, I thought he'd have a heart attack. He didn't, though. Bye, Mark. We really appreciate you being with us on today's show. The RR Show is a production of Evergreen Podcast and Wessler Media. Now, if you'd be so kind, follow or subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And if you also haven't done already, please leave us a very nice 5-star review. Thanks, Mom. Also, for more, you can visit rrshow.com. That's rrshow.com. I'm your host, Vince. My producer, Kevin, thank you. We'll see you next time.